Before we go any further, can we back up a second? What exactly are strategic groups?
Sure. Within any industry, you have these groups of companies that kind of compete along similar lines. Think of it like different tiers within the same market.
Okay, so like in the car world, you've got luxury brands, economy cars, and everything in between.
You got it. So looking across strategic groups means...
Welcome to Witter. Who Has Time to Read? The podcast that brings deep dives for busy minds. Listen to AI hosts Jane and Dane and get ready to unpack the world's most captivating books in just a fraction of the time. Whether commuting, working out, or just squeezing in a quick break, we deliver key insights, thought-provoking themes, and takeaways you can carry into your day. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Plus, use our links in the description to purchase this book. Your support helps us bring more engaging book discussions to you. Listen and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Who has time to read? You do, with Witter.
All right, buckle up, listeners, because we are diving into some uncharted waters today.
Sounds exciting.
You sent in some really fascinating excerpts from Blue Ocean Strategy, and honestly, I'm ready to ditch the cutthroat competition and create my own market.
It's funny you should say that. That's exactly what this book is all about. Creating a space where you're not just battling for scraps in an overcrowded market.
So are we talking like finding a secret island where we can set up shop and call the shots?
That's a great way to put it. Kim and Mauborgne, the authors, they call this a blue ocean. They contrast it with red oceans, which represent those brutal battlegrounds we're trying to escape.
Okay, so red ocean bad, lots of sharks. Blue ocean good, clear sailing.
Exactly. It's about finding that space where the competition is irrelevant, because what you're offering is totally unique, like Cirque du Soleil, for example.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. They didn't just try to make a better circus.
Right. They completely reinvented the game. They brought in this sophisticated blend of circus arts, theater, music.
It's like they threw out the rule book and said, what if a circus was elegant?
Precisely. They understood that to escape the red ocean of traditional circus, you couldn't just be a little bit better or cheaper. You had to redefine the entire experience.
And they tapped into a whole new customer base while they were at it. People who wouldn't be caught dead at a regular circus are suddenly lining up for this.
That's the power of the blue ocean. You're not fighting over the same tired customers. You're creating new demand.
Okay, I'm hooked. But how do we actually find these elusive blue oceans? It feels like searching for buried treasure.
It's more about shifting your perspective than digging for gold. The authors actually lay out 6 distinct paths to uncovering these opportunities.
6 paths, huh? Well, lead the way. We're ready to explore.
Okay, so one powerful path is to start looking across alternative industries.
Wait, so don't just compare yourself to your direct competitors.
Right. Look beyond the obvious. Ask yourself, what other industries, even those that seem totally unrelated, might be fulfilling a similar need or desire for my target market?
Okay, I need an example. I'm a bit lost, to be honest.
Think about NetJets. They saw this gap between commercial airlines, which are a pain, and private jet ownership, which is way too expensive for most people.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
By combining the luxury of private jets with a shared ownership model, they created fractional jet ownership, a whole new market.
Wow, they didn't just join the airline industry. They redefined luxury travel. It's like they invented a new category altogether.
Exactly. And it all came from looking beyond the traditional boundaries of their industry. Another path the authors talk about is looking across what are called strategic groups.
Okay, before we go any further, can we back up a second? What exactly are strategic groups?
Sure. Within any industry, you have these groups of companies that kind of compete along similar lines. Think of it like different tiers within the same market.
Okay, so like in the car world, you've got luxury brands, economy cars, and everything in between.
You got it. So looking across strategic groups means understanding that customers often trade up or trade down within these groups based on, say, their budget or their needs at that time.
But they're still stuck within those existing tiers, right?
Right. What if you could create something that appealed to those who were falling through the cracks between those groups? Like Curves, for example. They saw an opportunity in the fitness industry.
Hold on, are we talking about those women-only gyms?
Yes. Instead of trying to compete with the big box gyms with all the fancy equipment, they created this simplified women-only workout experience.
Ah, they targeted a specific group that felt intimidated by the existing options.
Exactly. And they found their blue ocean by tapping into that completely overlooked customer base.
Makes you wonder what other needs are going unmet in other industries.
It really does. And that leads us to another path, one that I think you'll find particularly interesting, looking across time.
Okay, now we're talking. This is where things get really interesting, right? Tell me more.
So this path, looking across time, it's about paying attention to the big picture. Like, remember back when everyone was freaking out about illegal music downloads?
Oh, totally. It was like the Wild West out there.
Right. But Apple, they saw an opportunity in all that chaos. They realized, hey, people clearly want digital music, but they also want it to be legal, easy, you know?
So they swooped in with iTunes and basically changed the game completely.
Exactly. They weren't just selling music, they were selling peace of mind. And that brings us to a really important concept from the book, value innovation.
Okay, value innovation. I feel like I hear that term everywhere these days, but to be honest, it always sounds a little like fluffy and abstract to me.
Yeah, it's one of those business buzzwords that gets thrown around a lot. But in this context, it's really about creating a product or service that's not just a bit better than the competition, it's about creating a whole new ballgame.
So it's about offering something so good that customers are willing to ditch their old ways and jump on board with you.
Exactly. It's like, imagine traditional competition is like playing chess. You're stuck with the same board, the same rules. Value innovation is like creating a whole new game.
Okay, I like where you're going with this. So you're not just a better chess player, you're inventing like 3D chess or something.
Exactly. And with your own rule book, the authors use this example of Yellowtail, that Australian wine. You know it.
Yeah, they had that kangaroo on the label, right?
That's the one. They totally changed the game. They weren't trying to be the fanciest wine on the shelf. They were going for fun, approachable, easy to drink.
And affordable, right. I feel like they made wine less intimidating.
Exactly. They completely understood their target market, people who felt intimidated by all that stuffy wine jargon, overwhelmed by the choices. So what did they do?
Let me guess. They simplified everything.
You got it. They eliminated all that jargon, they streamlined their selection, just a few key varietals, and they focused on bold, fruity flavors that just about everyone enjoys.
So they took something that a lot of people saw as kind of snooty and made it fun and accessible. It's brilliant, really.
Right. And the book breaks this process down into what they call the 4 actions framework: eliminate, reduce, raise, create.
Okay, so this is how they actually put this value innovation into practice.
Exactly. So thinking about Yellowtail again, what did they eliminate? All that intimidating jargon, the aging process, the huge variety of choices.
They basically removed all the barriers that were keeping people away from wine.
Exactly. What did they reduce?
Well, they didn't have 100 different wines.
Right.
I remember the selection was actually pretty simple.
Exactly. They reduced the variety, which not only streamlined their production, but also made it less overwhelming for the customer. And then, what did they raise?
Well, the taste was definitely a step up from like those really cheap bottles.
Mm-hmm.
Fruity, bold. I feel like they raised the bar on packaging, too. I mean, that kangaroo logo was everywhere.
Absolutely. They made it impossible to ignore. And finally, what did they create? This whole image of fun, approachability, wine without the attitude.
They weren't just selling a drink. They were selling an experience. So we found our blue ocean. We've got our value innovation firing on all cylinders. How do we make sure it lasts? Because eventually someone's going to notice your success and try to copy it, right?
100%. That's where this idea of strategic sequencing comes in.
Okay, break it down for me. Strategic sequencing.
So it's like building a house. You don't start with the roof, right? You need a strong foundation. And in this case, that foundation is something the authors call buyer utility.
So it's not enough to just be different. Your product or service has to actually solve a real problem for someone.
Exactly. Think about the Model T. It wasn't just a cool gadget. It solved the very real problem of limited mobility for people.
It's amazing how something like reliable transportation can completely change people's lives, right?
Right. And that's the power of tapping into a real unmet need. The authors are really big on this idea. So before you even think about launching your blue ocean, you have to ask yourself, what problem am I solving that's so essential, so deeply felt, that it's going to create lasting demand?
Because if you don't get that part right, then everything else is kind of pointless.
Exactly. And that leads to the next crucial element, strategic pricing.
Yes. Pricing. Always a tricky one. How do you make something accessible to a lot of people while still making sure you can pay the bills, right? I remember the book mentioned something called the price corridor of the mass. What's that all about?
So imagine a spectrum of prices for the products and services that your target customers are already using, right?
Okay, so in the case of Yellowtail, we're not just thinking about other wines, we're thinking about beers, maybe even cocktails.
Exactly. You need to position your offering within that existing price range, so it's a no-brainer for them to switch. Too expensive, and they'll stick with what they know. Too cheap, and they might think it's too good to be true.
Finding that sweet spot, right? But I mean, creating something new and innovative, that's got to be expensive. How do you make sure you can actually afford to offer all this amazing value?
This is where that target costing idea comes into play. Remember we talked about that?
Yeah, it was about figuring out how much you can spend and still make a profit, right?
Exactly. But the key here is you don't start with your costs and then figure out a price you work backwards.
Interesting. So it's like setting a budget based on what customers are willing to pay, not just on how much it costs you to make the thing.
You got it. And that's where you have to get creative. It forces you to rethink your whole process, streamline operations, find innovative materials, maybe team up with other companies.
I see. So it's not about being cheap. It's about being smart and efficient with your resources.
Right. It's like, remember those furniture companies that started designing everything to ship flat packed?
Yeah. It's like building with adult Legos.
Exactly. They found a way to cut costs without compromising quality. And as a bonus, it's easier for the customer too. So it's a win-win.
Okay, so we've got a killer product. Our pricing is on point. We figured out our costs. What's the last piece of the puzzle?
Getting everyone on board.
Ah, you mean like convincing my great Aunt Susan to buy my product?
Well, her too, ideally.
Yeah.
But I'm talking more about that internal buy-in. Your employees, your partners, your investors, everyone needs to be on the same page. The authors call this adoption.
Because even the best idea in the world won't go anywhere if you don't have a team that believes in it, right?
Exactly. Think about any time something really innovative came along. It required people to change their habits, to really embrace a new way of thinking.
And that can be hard. People don't always like change.
That's why communication is key. You have to explain the why behind the change. The authors say it's important to bring everyone along on the journey.
So it's about building a movement, not just a business. I like that. But even if you get everyone on board, even with the perfect strategy, someone's still going to try to copy your success eventually, right?
Yeah. True. But the authors have some thoughts on that too. First, don't be afraid of a little competition. Sometimes imitation just proves that you were onto something big, you know?
So it's not always a bad thing if other people start jumping into your blue ocean.
Exactly. It can actually be good for everyone, but you do want to stay ahead of the curve, so focus on building momentum quickly.
So the faster you can grow your customer base, the harder it is for someone to come in and steal your thunder.
Right. And while you're at it, never stop innovating.
So you're saying even in a blue ocean, you can't just sit back and relax.
Not a chance. The market changes, technology changes. What's groundbreaking today is old news tomorrow.
It's about always asking what's next.
Exactly. Never stop exploring. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from red oceans to blue oceans, from value innovation to strategic sequencing. But really, it all boils down to this. Are you ready to shake things up? Are you ready to find your blue ocean?
That's quite a challenge you've left us with today, expert speaker. And to all our listeners out there, what's going to be? Are you going to dive into the blue or fight it out with the sharks? Until next time, keep exploring.
Thanks for listening to Witter, Who Has Time to Read, produced by One Media. Please support the author by purchasing the book or audiobook using the link in the description. It's a great way to help keep the art of writing alive. And stay in the loop. Subscribe to our newsletter for updates on weekly deep dives. And don't forget to share your thoughts or suggest our next deep dive at witterpodcast@gmail.com.